Hello and welcome to the CDP Europe Awards 2021 here on Euronews. For the next half hour, we're going to be talking to European mayors, investors, CEOs of leading European companies, the European Commission's finance chief, and we'll have a message from German Chancellor Angela Merkel, all of them focused on the transition towards a greener and climate-neutral economy. To explain more about this event, I'm joined by CDP Europe Executive Director Max Weiss. Max, this charity of yours is all about environmental transparency and action. What are the big trends this year?
CDP runs the world's environmental disclosure system, and we've seen some really great progress towards the Paris Treaty. And now we're facing a pandemic which has essentially undermined our environmental system and our economic system.
Big time, yeah.
Right? So this is presenting us with a historic opportunity to come back in the right way.
Right.
So the key question for all of our stakeholders here today is, how are you going to build forward better?
Build forward better. That's what we're going to be talking about throughout these awards. Let's get started right now. When you talk about climate change, there is no bigger debate than the one on fossil fuels and how to decarbonize the heaviest of industries. Let's talk to some of them. Jan Jenisch is Chief Executive Officer of the world's largest cement company, LafargeHolcim. Marianne Vinholt is Chief Financial Officer at the Danish energy company Ørsted, and Francesco Gattei, Chief Financial Officer of the Italian oil and gas giant Eni. So we need a COVID-19-sized drop in emissions, 7 to 8% a year, to cap global warming at 1.5 degrees Celsius. So given the experience you've been through, this is a question to all of you. Is it realistic to achieve this? Marianne.
Yes, it is realistic, but it requires that we really accelerate the green transition, and it requires bold decisions. We have the solutions for green energy because we now can build green energy cheaper than we can build fossil fuels in most parts of the world. But we also need to mature technologies to decarbonize the hard-to-abate sectors.
But Jan, making cement, for instance, I mean, how can you be realistic about these targets?
No, we're going to make it happen. I think now, as we emerge from the COVID-19 pandemic, I think our normal way of living needs to be one of economic progress in a much more sustainable way. And this year offers us a transformational moment for all of us to shift gears.
Francesco, you lead one of those industries that will make the difference if we make this or not. What chance do you think we have, in your view?
What is important is that we recognize the challenge, we recognize the efforts that have to be done. The challenge is to decarbonize a system that was built in 250 years, and we have to use all the levers available, and all the players, so customers, government and suppliers, are to play their game. We have to be pragmatic, we have to be economically driven, efficient driven, and we have to be innovative in the way to play, and not ideological.
Right.
That is the answer to this question.
So, Francesco, can you give me one concrete example of how you're doing that at Eni, an energy giant, how you're making that transition?
But we are playing all the different ways. We are expanding our capability in renewables, clearly, that is the easier way. But on the other side, we have to provide new products to the market, so buy biofuels with our specific technology, and reducing the emission of our operations. To reduce emission from our operation, we have to increase efficiency, we have to produce more gas, and we have also to deploy carbon capture and storage systems.
Okay, well, Jan, over at LafargeHolcim, I mean, I would tend to think that it's more of a burden than an opportunity for you to make that transition, but what do you think?
No, we are totally excited to make this happen. So already today, our top sustainable product, cement, is using 20% of recycled demolition waste from old buildings and old infrastructure. In our concrete, our EcoPact green concrete is already using 1/3 of the product is recycled demolition waste. So we're totally excited now with this new path. And honestly, as a company, we are excited that from society to politics to the consumer, they all want this to happen.
Marianne, I'd like to pick up on that too. Ørsted has made the CDP A list again. How did you make that transition? How are you making that transition so fast? Are you the benchmark now for your sector?
That has been done by exiting a lot of activities. We have made a lot of divestments, but also by setting extremely challenging targets for ourselves. And we have also then overperformed on these very challenging targets that we set ourselves quite early in this transition phase.
Thank you so much to Francesco, to Jan, to Marianne for all of this insight. Thank you very much to all of you. Thank you. So it is not only Europe's businesses that require a transformation, but also Europe's cities. So we go now from the boardroom to City Hall. Kostas Bakoyannis, mayor of Athens, on CDP's Cities A list of environmental leaders. Particularly over the past year, mayors have faced extreme challenges. Alongside managing the impacts of the pandemic, there's the need to continue and scale up the efforts to reduce their city's emissions, to make changes to the city spaces to adapt to climate impacts and build resilient, better living spaces for their citizens. 3/4 of Europeans, they live in cities, and it is in cities where most emissions and environmental impact take place. How do you see your role in a green recovery from COVID-19 and delivering on the European Green Deal? That's a big job, Kostas, isn't it?
It is, and at the end of the day, we have to be very clear about our strategic goals. Is it about just bouncing back, or is it about bouncing forward? Because, this crisis is also an opportunity. It's an opportunity to transform our cities and bring them into the new century, into a different time with different challenges. Don't forget that in the past, history teaches us, pandemics have been catalysts for transformations in urban centers.
What one part of your approach would you highlight as helping the most to getting on that A list, Mayor?
Well, as you know, and this is the big picture, cities right now are responsible for 50% of energy consumption around the world and 75% of CO2 emissions. So it's up to us to actually build bottom-up, local solutions, nature-based solutions that will actually, A, reclaim or liberate public space, quality public space, B, adopt a new model of sustainable mobility. Basically, it's not just about cars, it's also about walkability, it's also about mass transport, it's also about alternative means of transport, and C, it's about making sure that at the same time, this is especially important for us in Europe, we actually change while retaining our soul. We don't want to turn our cities into, theme parks.
No, indeed.
We want to keep our DNA alive.
Thank you very much. Evcharisto, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So let's switch over to Northern Europe, to Finland, to the city of Turku. And the mayor of Turku is Minna Arve. Minna, you've talked about a 1.5 degree life for Turku. What does that mean for people who live in your city?
It means climate-friendly life, it means sustainable life, and it comes from clean energy, carbon-neutral transportation like electric buses, bicycles, how to improve pedestrians walking in the city. It comes from the sustainable infrastructure like energy efficiency in housing, and it comes from the circular economy things where we diminish the waste and the emissions in a way. And in the end, it's about everyday choices of everyone in the city. So we have to encourage our citizens and companies as well.
Mayor, what's the most successful example of city-business collaboration in Turku?
We have quite many, but I would say that the big picture, these energy investments have, and now we are getting rid of coal next year totally, and that's where we have needed a lot of cooperation with big companies as well. Another maybe smaller example, we have a place called Smart Chemistry Park where the companies in the chemistry business, they can use their others sources and wastes and so on, and they are finding solutions, and we have created the platform for that, and they are using it together with the platform that we have created. And third one I'd like to mention is about how we are taking the heat out of our wastewaters, and that's how we can heat the city partly with totally clean these wastewater how it's called, the result of that. And in the end, there is also something which we can use for biogas production. And there we need a lot of companies as well. So good examples.
What has been the impact of your environmental policies so far on jobs, on public health, your citizens' well-being? What's that impact?
The impact is very important, and everything what you are including to make like everyday life easier, you are making the pedestrian way of easier, these kind of things, you have to put it concretely to the people what it does actually mean. And that's the impact they can also see, and that's how you get the people motivated. But in the end of the day, everything is about the citizens. It's about present and future generations, and that's why we are doing it. That keeps me motivated. I'm quite sure that keeps everyone in the board motivated.
It's all about the citizens. It's all about the people. Thank you very much, Mayor. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
We now turn to Paris and to Mayor Anne Hidalgo. Mayor, your city is on CDP's Cities A list. What one part of your approach would you highlight as helping the most to achieve this?
Pour répondre à votre question, c'est dans le domaine des transports d'abord que nos efforts ont eu les meilleurs résultats. En 15 ans, nous avons réduit d'un tiers les gaz à effet de serre et derrière ces chiffres, en fait, ce sont des vies qui ont été sauvées. N'oublions pas que chaque année, la pollution est responsable de plus de 6500 décès dans la métropole du Grand Paris. Le vélo est le symbole de ce succès. Grâce aux 1000 km de voies cyclables, il y a désormais plus de vélos que de voitures sur certains grands axes. C'était inimaginable. Notre objectif est de faire de Paris une ville 100% cyclable, c'est-à-dire où on peut faire du vélo en sécurité partout.
And what has been the impact of your environmental policies on jobs, public health, and the well-being of Parisians?
On le sait, les transformations écologiques ont de multiples répercussions très positives et mettent en place ce que l'on appelle des cercles vertueux. Elles améliorent le cadre de vie, elles protègent notre santé, créent également des emplois. Et c'est le message que nous, les maires, nous devons porter en Europe.
Indeed.
Ces emplois, qui sont nouveaux, sont liés à la lutte contre l'urgence climatique. Ils seront au cœur de la relance économique, au cœur du Green Deal. Et pour que cette relance soit véritablement respectueuse de la planète et de notre bien-être, elle devra passer par les grandes villes.
Yep.
Je me suis rendue à Bruxelles il y a 3 semaines avec mes collègues, notamment de Bruxelles et de Namur, pour dire à la Commission européenne que nous sommes prêts à agir avec elle. J'ai également rappelé que les fonds européens doivent absolument être mobilisés là où ils sont les plus utiles, c'est-à-dire pour financer les secteurs qui jouent un rôle moteur dans la transition écologique. À l'inverse, il faut arrêter, il faut cesser de financer les activités néfastes pour l'environnement et celles qui encouragent des modes de production qui perpétuent aussi des inégalités.
Mayor Anne Hidalgo, merci beaucoup. Thank you very much.
Merci.
So our guests have talked a lot about reaching 2030 targets and achieving net zero emissions by 2050. Through the Green Deal, the EU is looking to move a minimum of 1 trillion euros of sustainable investments by 2030 to unlock and fund the technologies needed. Two people who are key to making this happen are Mairead McGuinness, European Commissioner for Financial Services, and Ambroise Fayol, Vice President of the European Investment Bank, or EIB, now dubbed the EU's Climate Bank. The CDP Europe report from last year found that European companies must double their investments to get to net zero by 2050. How can the EU drive them to close this gap more quickly and shift the trillions? Let's start with you, Mairead.
Well, I suppose we have a destination. We know that we have to be climate neutral by 2050. So in a sense, this is something that has to happen. So how do we, if you like, re-engineer the financial system towards sustainable investments?
Right.
And the key to me is also in the transition finance. So how do we finance those companies who want to get there, but at the moment can't? You're right. We need to mobilize a huge amount of money. And it means several things. We need companies to understand their impact on the environment and indeed the impact of climate and environmental degradation on their accounts. So that's key. And investors need quality information so that they can make investments in line with their choice if they are very much supportive of the climate targets.
Right.
So there's a lot of initiatives within the Commission happening, and equally at a global level, this issue is now much higher up the agenda. And again, the Green Deal, the European Green Deal, is all about more sustainable economies, more sustainable societies. So getting the investment flows will be essential to deliver on all of that.
Well, okay, Ambroise, yeah, getting those investment flows. Can you give one example of that?
We are financing on average every year around 60 billion euros of projects. So we are a big institution. We are financing a lot of projects in renewable energy in Europe. We are financing a lot of projects for energy efficiency of buildings, of colleges, of universities, and we are financing a lot of projects related to innovation that have a climate component that is absolutely needed, because we know that we need innovation to reach the 2050 climate neutrality objective.
Mairead, can you give one concrete example of how the Green Deal is having impact now?
Well, first of all, that we're very committed to it despite COVID-19. And I think there was a sense perhaps that some were saying, well, let's park our ambition on climate and biodiversity loss because we're trying to recover from a pandemic. But in fact, the pandemic has heightened our awareness of the need for more immediate action. And we need to also understand, and this will be a challenge, that it isn't just climate we're talking about. That's clearly the big, if you like, concern, but also environmental degradation. We're talking about water resources, all of those things, including social issues. So in future, in a way, our companies are going to have to report their financial, if you like, performance, but equally and on an equal footing have to report their environmental, their social, their climate performance.
Right.
So this is, if you like, a very holistic approach on the EU Commission level to, if you like, push for that change.
Yeah, because we've set these targets, climate neutral by mid-century, but how do we do that? We got to get down to the nuts and bolts of that. In the finance side, in the political side, we need that commitment. What does that roadmap do as far as how the EIB operates?
Well, what it means is that for half of what we are going to do by 2025, it will have to be in the field of climate action or environmental degradation. That is something related to projects to increase solar power, to increase offshore wind farm. These kind of things that are also extremely important to finance. It means also a lot of energy efficiency that we are doing, but that we will do much more. It needs innovation. But what we need to be sure of is that every project that we finance is in line with the objectives of the Paris Agreement. And we were the first institution to do that.
So that means the first institution, in other words, you are actually declining loans on that basis and taking others on that basis.
Yeah, exactly. That means that there are things that we were financing before and that we will not do anymore. And if you want one example, we used to finance airport expansions. We will not do that anymore.
Indeed. Mairead Ambroise, thank you very much. And we hope that this does drive us in that right direction. Thank you very much. Now, it won't be possible to meet any global climate goal without protecting our natural capital, biodiversity, global forests, and water resources. To talk now about how all environmental topics must be seen as one, I'm joined by the CEOs of Swedish asset manager Handelsbanken Fonder and the Austria Fibers company Lenzing. That's with Magdalena Wallqvist Alveskog and Stefan Dobotsky. Welcome to both of you. How important is it that the European economy shift unsustainable resource consumption to a circular model for meeting the climate neutrality goal? And how far away are we from this being a reality?
I think it's not only important, it's critical. We have to go into climate neutrality, but we also have to combine that with achieving the goals of the Agenda 2030. And by doing both of these, we can not only change consumer behavior and new technologies, we need to change to a new circular mindset.
Stefan, critical, need to speed up?
I think it is critical, but it will take time. So yes, we need to speed up. It is critical because we see a potential of up to 45% of the total carbon reduction we need to accomplish just by going circular. And it will take time because, as was mentioned, it will take time to get the consumer on board and to get technology-wise ready. And I think we are yet at the beginning, And I do not yet necessarily see that we are riding the wave as we need to, but we have started. But at the moment, we are still below 10% of making circular really a part of the carbon agenda.
So what are you doing about that?
On our front, we have a relatively simple business model. We take carbon and sunlight, or the trees do that, and we turn them into biodegradable, compostable products. Lensing is greening up the value chain within textiles, and that is important because textiles account for 10% of the carbon footprint. It is 150 million tons of waste every year, and what we do is we make a very, I think, meaningful contribution.
Magdalena, Handelsbanken attracted the largest inflow to Swedish mutual funds in 2020. How much of this is due to more sustainable funds?
It's a bit hard to tell because we have turned all our funds into sustainable funds in one way or the other. So I would say all our inflows came into sustainable funds. But note that half of the inflows to our funds, which is 1/4 of the total net inflow to the Swedish market, came into one fund, our Handelsbanken Sustainable Energy. So you can definitely say that the customers are interested in investing in the future and in energy efficiency and sustainable energy.
Stefan, how key is protection of natural capital for meeting the Paris Agreement, the climate agreement, and how do you approach this investment in nature in your strategy?
We're very committed to really science-based approaches. We committed to reduce our carbon footprint per ton of product by 40% already by the year 2024, 50% by 2030, and to be carbon neutral by latest 2015. However, I think on the larger scale, and that's a challenge for government, we need to come up with frameworks that go beyond GDP in its traditional measure and traditional way to, define progress of the world. And I think these are concepts that indeed are complex, are difficult, but I think this is more for policymakers to think of. We in industry can take the lead by influencing with the right KPIs and putting value to some crucial KPIs already in our investment decisions today.
Stefan, Magdalena, we must go beyond, as you say. Thank you very much for joining us on the CDP Europe Awards. Thank you. Our final guest is someone who served as Environment Minister before becoming one of Europe's most powerful leaders. And as a scientist, she knows well the urgency of acting before it's too late. German Chancellor Angela Merkel.
Sehr geehrte Damen und Herren, ich gratuliere allen Preisträgern der CDP Europe Awards. Die Preisverleihung zeigt es und die Umweltdaten von CDP belegen es. Viele Unternehmen, Städte und Kommunen machen sich für mehr Nachhaltigkeit stark. Und sie sind erfolgreich damit. Diese Umweltdaten dokumentieren und fördern Fortschritt. Denn Transparenz erhöht den Ehrgeiz beim Klima- und Umweltschutz. Gemeinsam wollen wir Europa bis 2050 zum ersten klimaneutralen Kontinent machen. Die Europäische Kommission hat mit dem Green Deal den Weg dorthin aufgezeigt. Es ist ein langer Weg. Umso wichtiger ist das Zwischenziel, das die EU-Mitgliedstaaten verfolgen, bis 2030 die Treibhausgasemissionen um 55% gegenüber 1990 zu senken. Dieses ehrgeizige Etappenziel verdeutlicht, dass wir nicht irgendwann, sondern jetzt entschlossen handeln müssen. Diese Entschlossenheit zeigen die Unternehmen, Städte und Kommunen, die ihre Daten bei CDP offenlegen. Sie haben erkannt, dass aktiver Klima- und Umweltschutz auch ein Wettbewerbsvorteil ist. Denn Nachhaltigkeit wird von immer mehr Investoren und Kunden erwartet. Ohnehin hilft der Einsatz moderner, klima- und ressourcenschonender Technologien, mittel- bis langfristig Kosten einzusparen. Gleichwohl erfordert der Klimaschutz ein grundlegendes Umdenken und Umsteuern. Daher ist auch der Staat gefragt. Für den Wandel hin zur Klimaneutralität bedarf es geeigneter Anreize und Rahmenbedingungen. Dafür setze ich mich auch multilateral ein. Aber nichts ist überzeugender als der Erfolg und das Vorbild jener, die es verstehen, im Sinne des Klimaschutzes aus neuen Ideen auch neue Produkte, Dienstleistungen und Verfahren zu entwickeln. CDP fördert diesen Wettbewerb um die besten Ideen und ihre Umsetzung. Ich danke allen, die sich diesem Wettbewerb stellen. Ich kann Sie nur ermuntern, in Ihrem Engagement für mehr Nachhaltigkeit nicht nachzulassen. Alles Gute und weiter viel Erfolg.
Our thanks to Chancellor Merkel for a powerful call to action to end this year's CDP Europe Awards. Max, a final thought.
Well, I'd like to give a special thanks to our CDP and Euronews teams, and of course, to our event host, the European Investment Bank. And now, it's a historic opportunity for Europe to recover the right way. And our CDP A-listers and our speakers today are already doing so. So join us and build forward better.
And congratulations to all of the winners. Thanks to all of you for watching, and see you next time.